Steelers.
No, there we go.
SteelerFury.com.
Recorded live.
We are, in fact, not only live, we are so high-tech that we're simulcasting onto YouTube. This is the SteelerFury.com podcast draft extravaganza special. I am your host, Bradshaw DeBen, and as always, we're excited to start another season. This is season 9 for us, covering the Pittsburgh Steelers for Steeler Fury. And with me in his 9th season is the curmudgeonly author of the occasional Steelers pregame gospel and always opinionated about all matters Steelers and especially draft. His name is FC. He's with us. How are you, sir?
I am doing great. Get off my lawn.
just about who you are. Get off my lawn, kid. And also joining us, the survivor, we're going to call him from now on, because he survived a near-death experience. And it wasn't while he was actually recording a broadcast for Steeler Fury, which it very well could have been. But in this case, he's alive. He's with us. His name is SteelPerch. How are you, Perch?
Merry draft, Miss Boys and Girls.
Yeah, it's almost here. And actually today, the show that we're doing now is probably my favorite part of the entire year. I'm totally unprepared. I tried to make this high tech by connecting us to YouTube. So that we'd have a chance to, have some video clips that go with it and so on and so forth. But regardless, we're here now. Deal with it. This is the way it's going to go. So, gentlemen, let's start by talking about what the Steelers' offseason has looked like to this point in terms of the free agency moves, who they let go, who they added, and I'm going to give you the floor, FC, for a second, because we haven't heard much from you on the site. So let's catch us up to where you're at with the Steelers offseason.
I wish Martavius Bryant would stop smoking dope. Let's see. Other than that, it's been, I wasn't too shocked. I think Kelvin Beachum pretty early on let it be known that he was going to price himself out of Pittsburgh. And other than that, it's been, pretty mild. Lost depth linebackers, lost a few depth defensive backs, cut Cortez Allen. Le'Veon Bell's rehab looked like it was going poorly. Now it looks like it's going well. It could have been a lot worse. The Bryant thing is what's going to stand out in Steeler Nation. And just, what a waste of talent and potential. Trust me, I like smoking the green. I've been smoking the green a long time. But for an opportunity to play the NFL, I could get myself a bottle of Xanax. It's worst being the worst. I understand that he has more underlying problems. And, it's a real issue. But at the same time, we're fans. We're fans of the team. We have very high expectations, and he failed to meet those expectations.
Yeah, Perch, do you think long-term, to put your crystal ball glasses on, do you see this as being a kid that's going to be like a scared straight moment for him, or do you just think this is basically the beginning of the end?
No, I think it's probably more towards the beginning of the end, unfortunately, and that's hard for me to say, trying to be a realist. Because I think the kid's an outstanding athlete and a great player. But look just right up the road to Cleveland. They had a very similar player in Josh Gordon that could not get it together. And it's, if you think back towards the end of last year, remember there was like a first half or two in a game where Bryant was kind of benched and we couldn't quite figure out why. And Darius Hayward-Bay was getting snaps, and we were talking about how the coaches were idiots and what are they doing. Obviously, he's got some emotional problems. He reportedly was late for meetings, and the guy's got some serious issues. And how often have we actually seen one of those guys turn it all around? So, he might come back. We might get 8 more games out of him before he's kicked out of the league, or he might get a season before he takes a free agent deal somewhere else and then has his issues pop up again. But unless they get rid of the marijuana testing policy, I don't see him kicking this bugger. Unfortunately, which is hard for me to say.
Yeah, so to that end, FC, what do you do? What do you do with him? Do you just assume you're going to move forward without him? And if you happen to get some, get him back next season, do you deal with it? Like, in other words, do they approach the free agency and the draft the next couple of years as if they're not going to have him next year either? What do you think they do?
I think where I would start off with is I try to get the kid as much help as I can. From there, from a business standpoint, from an organizational standpoint, they have to be prepared to move on without him. You know, he chose to be suspended for the 8 to 10 games, you know, by, you know, continuously smoking the pot. And I completely agree with Perch. You know, you can name 50 players like Jeff Gore or like Josh Gordon for every Chris Carter, a guy that did get himself straightened out. It's you know, you coddle them, you hope for the best, but you prepare for the worst. So, you know, I believe that wide receiver has to, you know, it's not going to be at the forefront. You know, you would love to find another Antonio Brown in the 6th round, but that doesn't happen often. So I believe the Steelers have to, you know, begin. They're really going to hope. Obviously, that Coates, you know, who they drafted out of Auburn, is going to be the answer, but he's not. I think he's going to be a good player. I don't think he is going to be the dynamic player that Martavis Bryant could be, just because they're both, you know, big wide receivers, but Martavis Bryant has an explosive element that not many wide receivers to play in the NFL have had. Randy Moss. I mean, you're talking that type of potential, you know, and at the very top, what you can hope is that Sammy Coates maybe turns out like a Terrell Owens, you know, which I'd be thrilled with. You know, that's best case scenario, but I'm not holding my breath. And I believe the Steelers are going to look to address wide receiver either, you know, in this year's draft or perhaps maybe in next offseason free agency.
Well, I mean, if you look at it, I think that they did address Martavis Bryant last year when they drafted Sammy Coates in the 3rd round. That's his replacement. I mean, I think that they knew that his issues were that deep that there was a very realistic possibility of this guy washing out. I think what they look to attack in this draft is the replacement for Marcus Wheaton, who's going to be a free agent at the end of the year. So they'll go forward with Coates, they'll go forward with Brown, and maybe in the 3rd round this year or 4th round, they'll find another version of Wheaton. And I think that'll be their 3 going forward with the Hayward Bay as the 4th option. I think that's kind of what we're looking at.
That's funny, Perch. That's exactly where I'm at. I you know, the Steelers' penchant for drafting for next year, you know, they're looking ahead 1 year, figuring the guy is going to need a year with the team to develop. And it feels like Wheaton is the guy that, you know, they might be looking for a replacement Wheaton. That's what I would say as well, except I'm just not sure Sammy Coates is really a replacement for Martavis Bryant. I mean, although they're both big guys with some speed, they're not exactly the same player. Sammy Coates to me is not the same kind of deep threat that Martavis Bryant is, but maybe he does some other things for you that even it out.
No, I mean, Bryant isn't Marcus Wheaton, or, you know, he's not Mike Wallace, or he's not Emmanuel Sanders. They've dealt with different body types and different guys in there. The only common element was they were a speed guy that they thought can help stretch the defense. So they could have different styles and different body type players and work it into what they do. So I think that's kind of what they saw him as, being a big physical guy with a lot of speed that didn't run routes very well, but can stretch a defense. And although he's different than Bryant, and Bryant was raw as hell too when he came out. So I think they're similar enough that they can fill that role opposite of Brown.
Right. Well, the other thing that happened, of course, is that Heath Miller retired. And, you know, FC, you know, we've talked about Heath Miller so many times on this show, and it's like you could even get accused of being underappreciating him. But, you know, there were times in the last couple of years where he just was not the effective player that he was made out to be reputation-wise. And there were also, you know, some times when he was really a huge part of what was going on. It feels like him leaving, though, it still leaves a hole. Even if he wasn't playing up to the standard of 2007 Heath Miller, it still feels like something to replace him. Do you think Ladarius Green is a suitable replacement for now? You know, something different but replaces him? How do you view that swap of Heath Miller to Ladarius Green? And Jesse James, I guess.
I still haven't seen you do the backflips I expected. Mr. Move tight end, who's been banging the drum for that for years. And they get a guy that I think we both liked in the draft, that we both probably liked in the free agency process. in Ladarius Green, and that, it's a guy who's also going to help stretch defenses. It's going to add some of that threat to the defense that kind of help take away the loss of Martavis Bryant. So, and I think his blocking, for as athletic as he is, his blocking is going to be good enough. You've got Jesse James in there as well, who I think can do a little bit of everything okay. I don't think he's great in any area, but he's competent. I think he showed that last year. The tight end spot looks pretty young and pretty solid now. In Miller, he was just so savvy and so smart where he could find that empty hole in the seam and on 3rd and 6, get 6.5 yards. He was never going to bust that 6.5-yard play for 25, but he did just enough. Where Ladarius Green, I think, is going to be a more explosive player in the offense, a different element that they haven't really had before. So it's very exciting. I mean, if you look at what they did on offense, basically swapping out, an injured tackle for a Super Bowl winning left tackle, albeit back, and really upgrading that tight end spot.
Well, I just so to address that, me being excited, I'm very excited to have Ladarius Green in the offense. There's two things that maybe temper that just a little bit. One is, I'm not sure how good an all-around player Ladarius Green is, and therefore how much they will actually use him or how they will use him. I guess we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, I think it's great to have somebody athletic who can catch the ball. It's terrific, right? I don't know that Green is a real leaper and 50-50 ball winner, but he can run, man. So coming across the middle, he's terrific. The other thing that tempers my enthusiasm just a little bit is seeing what this offense looks like under Todd Haley. I'm just, I wonder if they're going to end up, if it's because they don't have this two-way tight end, if it'll hurt the sort of multipleness of their game, or maybe they'll just, bring in Ladarius Green to block a lot, as a decoy. I don't know. FC, how do you take this? This is the question thrown to you originally was Heath Miller retiring, and now the job essentially going to Ladarius Green and Jesse James. What do you make of that, and how do you think the Steelers will use them?
I think that Ladarius Green the plan is the one thing about Ladarius Green that I think that a lot of people just don't get is how solid of a run blocker he is. I went back and I watched. He didn't see a ton of playing time, but he's not a bad blocker. I mean, I don't want to sully, Heath Miller, but Heath Miller wasn't. I'll put it this way: we're not going to lose much in the run blocking game with Ladarius Green versus Heath Miller. Even though he's a smaller player, he doesn't necessarily have the physical dimensions, and he doesn't necessarily look the part of Heath Miller. He's probably a good 10 to 15 pounds lighter. He's a good blocker. What you're going to get out of Jesse James, I think, is going to surprise people because he is a good athlete. He is explosive. And the thing is he wants to work to get better. I'm not super concerned about the tight end position at this point. I would love to maybe later in the draft, maybe in the 7th round, add another one because I don't think Matt Spaeth has much left either. So, where we're at it's a position that's very underutilized by the Steelers. And in modern football, you're going to have to be able to attack that middle seam. I think that right now that Ladarius Green absolutely can do that. And I believe Jesse James has the potential to be very good at it in a humongous body. And he's just a mismatched nightmare. You couldn't cover him with a player like Lawrence Stevens or Ryan Shazier because, they're not going to, even in it, they may be able to physically hold up, but they don't have the length, and they're not going to be able to win positioning battles for the ball. If the ball's delivered, to a spot or to our window, it's Jesse James has, the physical ability and the physical dimensions lay somewhere between Rob Gronkowski and Jimmy Graham. He's right in between the two of them. Right whenever, the Heath Miller retired, I haven't posted a lot, obviously, but I showed the physical dimensions of all three players, what they've done. Now, don't get me wrong, what you do on the field is all that matters, and Rob Gronkowski is a superstar, and Jimmy Graham is a very good player on the brink of being a superstar whenever he's used correctly. And I understand that there's a lot of, pressure or a lot of, I'm having high expectations. But, the potential is there. And what we get out of that potential is going to be what matters.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's exciting. It's an exciting time to have some players. I mean, I kind of look at it as if Jesse James is the new Matt Spaeth, but with improved receiving ability and maybe even improved pass blocking ability. I think that's a really underrated part of Jesse James' game. If he's the second tight end in this offense, he's going to be great. My only issues with him ever were him counting on him to be the long-term number one tight end. I didn't necessarily like the selection, but as a number two, he's kind of perfect. So, I mean, there you go, Perch. I'm blowing your mind with the Jesse James praise.
All right, we'll take it.
We'll take it, exactly. So they didn't really they let Boykin go. They let Blake go. Those two things kind of cancel each other out maybe, but not, I guess the last part of talking about the Steelers offseason to this point is what they didn't address, I guess maybe gives you an idea about where they're headed in the draft, and kind of segues into our next segment, which is talking about the Steelers' needs after free agency. What are we really looking at for the draft? And I mean, you can read the tea leaves with who they brought in, but what do you think are the needs, Perch? What would you say the number one need is?
They have no strong safety. I mean, I don't think that the guy who starts the majority of games at strong safety this year is on the roster right now. So that's obviously a glaring hole. You can't say that about receiver because you've got William Gay coming back. You've got Ross Cockrell coming back, and both of those guys have starter experience. You've got Senquez Golston, who's a second-round pick, coming back. Duran Grant. So you've got four guys that can play corner. Obviously, the biggest need is going to be that strong safety spot, and then they're getting really thin. They were thin last year on defensive line, and then they lost Steve McClendon. So do they possibly double dip to the defensive tackle spot? Then I watched what they did in the offseason where they made no real concerted effort to re-sign their free agent inside linebackers. And I'm wondering out loud, are they maybe going to more of a four-man front? Or are they moving the defensive ends in with Hayward and Tuitt in, getting another defensive tackle behind them, and they've got four on the defensive tackle side, and then you got Dupree on one end, and they look for another edge rusher, but they haven't really looked at those guys. It's kind of confusing mixed signals from what they've sent, but obviously if they're going to stay in a 3-4 with Harrison ready to retire and Jarvis Jones in the last year of his disappointing rookie contract deal, they're going to need somebody to play that spot. So I don't quite know what they're doing in the front seven. I think that this draft will give us a little bit more of an idea. Obviously, they're going to go more to a blended front with being that they're in the sub-package football most of the time with the extra defensive back. But it's just the depth is a concern on basically the whole front seven.
FC, what do you, aside from safety, what's next in terms of how you see the needs?
Nose tackle.
Yeah, it's kind of a similar situation, right? Yeah.
Right, like Perch basically and I line up 100%. I could see left tackle maybe sliding in there as well. I would say our biggest need going into the draft is going to be a safety. I'm not going to say strong or free. The way we play our safeties, we need a safety, a starting safety. I definitely know that we need a defensive tackle, nose tackle, and it's a very, very weak draft for nose tackle, in my opinion. I think you have 3, possibly 4 guys that really fill the role, the way the Steelers play defense, that could actually play that position. I believe you can take I'll give you an example. A player like Rankins, yank him out. No chance he can play for the Steelers. It's from Louisville. A lot of people like him. Can't play in our system. He just is not a good fit. A good fit would be a player like Austin Johnson from Penn State. I would love to get him in the second round. A lot of people think I'm crazy. Even in the passing NFL, even with 61% of yards coming, via the passing game over the last 2 years, you still got to be able to run the football. You still got to be able to stop the run. And
Okay, but let me interject an idea here for you, and that is, with Steve McClendon and the occasional, McCullers, they were pretty good against the run last year. I mean, they were not necessarily like shutting people down completely, but I think they were top 5. So in theory, you could bring a guy in, let's say Perch is right, and they're shifting to at least a more multiple front look. So in that case, you could bring a guy in who's at least as good a nose tackle as Steve McClendon is for a straight up nose tackle, who can offer a little bit more in other, as a 3 tech or something.
That's my jumping off point. I don't see very many people that can fill the role. I think Steve McClendon was very much underappreciated in Pittsburgh, and we got to remember why Steve McClendon left Pittsburgh. Steve McClendon left Pittsburgh for one reason only. Our defensive line coach flat out came out and told him he's not going to play in specialty package, in the nickel or the dime for us. We have Tuitt, we have Hayward. He came out and he said it. He said, the reason I left Pittsburgh is because I am not able to get those downs, to rush the passer downs. He did not feel that he was being completely utilized in Pittsburgh. Steve McClendon was a very good player, a very underappreciated player, a very underrated player in Pittsburgh. He was a guy that whenever we lost him, I felt it was a big loss. Probably not as big as maybe in in limelight type way as a Martavius Bryant, but he's a big loss, and it's a loss that we're going to have to fill. And I only see 3 or 4 guys in this draft, and I'll just name them. Billings from Baylor, he's not going to be there. Austin Johnson from Penn State. And then I got 2 sleepers. One is Gerald Dixon Jr. from the University of South Carolina, who had some injury issues, but when healthy and going right, I think he's a guy that you're going to be able to get in the 6th round that will play a very Casey Hampton-ish nose tackle for you. He's a massive man who doesn't tire out. When you get a big guy, generally he's good for 25 to 35 plays a game. It's horrible to say, but the fatter you are, the worse shape you're in. Dixon Jr. can actually give you probably 45 to 55 high-quality snaps a game, if healthy. And Antoine Woods, who I think is going to get gassed because of the shoulder injuries at USC. Those are the guys I think can play nose tackle in the odd or even the even fronts in the 3-4. The other guys, you're looking at 1 and 3 gap penetrators, and it's not something that the Steelers are looking for. If they were, I think they would have kept McClendon, or you probably could have had McClendon come back and allowed him to play in that type of role, which he wanted to, and the Steelers just didn't feel that's what they wanted to do with that position.
If you look at the guys they're looking at guys that maybe I think they just don't think that McClendon was a penetrator. Because if you look at like Javon Hargrave, a guy that they've shown a lot of interest in, and Billings,
sure,
they're both guys that in 60% of the snaps are going to be in more of that 3 tech than a 0 or a 1 traditional nose tackle, just because of the sub package football. And the run, I think a lot of
play 2 gap though. And both those guys can 2 gap. I think Hargraves from South Carolina State here he's going to be hell on wheels. I definitely like him. I haven't started hammering players, but trust me, there's a lot of players in this draft as we get onto this that I'm going to absolutely hammer. There's guys that I feel I wouldn't take in the 4th or 5th round that a lot of Steeler fans would like to take in the 2nd round. There's just people that scare me so much. I'll give you a hand. Vernon Butler. Wouldn't touch him. Vernon Butler is undraftable, in my opinion. Undraftable. Half assisted tackle against quality competition. You can sit there and you can look at the 31.5 tackles for a loss. Of those 31.5 tackles for a loss, 23 of those tackles for loss came against 1 AA competition.
Yeah, that's not happening, right?
Yeah, Kenny Clark, real quick. Kenny Clark, I love him.
Yeah.
That's your Steve McClendon in this year's draft from UCLA.
Yeah, I got
Well,
you.
I just think that with McCullers, they have a guy that can play that traditional nose tackle and take those 20 or 30% of the snaps. I think what they're looking for is a guy who could play that 3-tech or kick out to a 5-tech to be a sub-package guy to rotate in so we don't burn out our 2 starting defensive ends as much. I think that's more of the world or the realm that they're kind of looking in right now, is somebody who can be a little bit more versatile. And when they need that plugger and run stuffer, you got your big, fat, 350-pound guy who can do that on a limited number of snaps a game. So I think that they're looking for more of an interior penetrating guy to play on passing downs, and they'll eat the snaps that they need to eat at nose tackle with McCullers. So we'll see which way they go, but I think that that's their line of thinking, but that's just my guess.
Yeah. Hey, FC, just 2 more quick names since we're on the nose tackle conversation that didn't get mentioned. One would be DJ Reader from Clemson. Do you see him as being more of like a, I don't know.
Where does he fit? I think he made Todd and Lawson. If you look, he missed some time last year. He played in 8 games. If you look in the 8 games that he played, I think Clemson allowed 1.2 or 1.3 yards per rush. He's a fantastic player. The question is, can he stay healthy? I absolutely love those kids out of Alabama. I like Jerron Reed more than I like Sean Robinson. I like Sean Robinson based purely 100% on potential and getting him out of that piece of shit Nick Saban's defensive system and into more of an NFL system. I've never seen a player regress more than Sean Robinson did at Alabama.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, well, the other guy that didn't get mentioned, that's sort of I don't know. I mean, sleeper maybe, but Chris Mays from Georgia. I mean, if you're looking for just that kind of like gigantic body that can move.
He has a little bit of maturity issues. I watch you watch him play and you're like, oh, okay, this kid's for real. But there's concerns. I have the same type of concerns with Niall Lawrence Stample that played at Florida State. This really looks. If I could put like Matt Ioannidis from Temple's heart and compete level in either one of those players, I think you would have a top 20 pick. It's getting the full package. You know what I mean? It's like getting the guy. If Perch is right, and there is a very good chance that he is, another player you might want to look for in that interior would be Malik Collins. You got to remember, if we want to get a top safety, and if we maybe want to address cornerback or tight end or left tackle, we may have to try to steal or find that diamond in the rough. And since we traded away 24% of our draft for fucking kickers and punters last year, we're going to left handicap in a way.
Hey, Perch, what do FC brought up Collins, and I swore I was only going to talk about one more interior defensive guy, but Malik Collins, he fits a little bit more of your penetrator thing. What do you make of Vincent Valentine, the guy that plays next to him? Because Valentine is a guy that, on paper, he looks like the better NFL prospect, but it's kind of like FC said, if you could put Collins's football IQ and drive into Valentine, you'd have the thing.
Yeah, I think Valentine's probably a little bit more limited athletically, though. I don't think that he's a guy that is going to be a move guy, more of a penetrator. I think he's more of a plugger. He's draftable. I think he's a late-round pick, and that's where he'll go. But, he's just another big body is how I would rate him.
Gotcha. Okay, well, Perch, going back to you for a second, just to kind of wrap it up, obviously those are the 3 big needs in terms of the first 2 big needs, rather. But I assume at some point in here, things like cornerback, a wide receiver replacement for the future, and maybe even an edge rusher for next year. They have the same problem they have at wide receiver with edge rusher next year. They've got a couple of guys in there last year. What do you think is the next biggest need after some sort of a defensive tackle and strong safety?
Obviously, it's got to be corner. They've got to get another guy in there, add to the mix, being that they are playing 3 corners 60% of the time, and we think they have roughly 3 competent corners on the roster now. And if you've got any injuries or anything like that, and William Gay is not a spring chicken either. So obviously, third to me has to be corner. Although a lot of Steeler fans will tell you that's the first need. I think it's probably third after defensive line and safety in some sort of order, 1, 2. corner is probably 3, but the Steelers have all, Kevin Colbert's a predictable son of a gun, and he loves that third-round skill position sort of guy. And they've looked at, some running backs. They've looked at some receivers that kind of fit in that range. It would not shock me to see them go safety, defensive tackle, skill position, and neglect corner until the fourth round or later, and have people lose their fucking mind. That's how I see it happening.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you, man. FC, anything else need-wise we didn't talk about? What do you think about the idea of drafting a developmental quarterback?
Matters to developmental quarterback. They're sitting there, and let's say let's say that Cardell Jones is there. Oh, cool. No. Hackenberg is damaged goods in my opinion. I like him. If he's there in the 4th round, I might be tempted. You run him out there in the preseason and be able to fuck over Bill O'Brien or somebody, and in the future, be able to rob a team. I'm all for trying to get assets and to rob somebody in the future. But out of the developmental quarterbacks that I think you might be able to get past the 3rd round or even the 3rd round, you have to look at Jones from Ohio State, who has arm talent. He's Jeff George type arm talent. I know Jeff George is the guy that we throw out, but he had an absolute howitzer connected to his shoulder. I don't know. I question if Cardell Jones is ever going to get the touch down. And then Hackenberg, who, I want him. I want him to be good. He went to Fort Union Military Academy. He went to Penn State. He wants to compete, but he does the one thing you can never do as a quarterback or a field general. He has no problems throwing everybody under the bus. And that's just horrible leadership, And
if that ball was 10 yards of him, he'd miss.
Mm-hmm. Throwing them under the bus, he would miss. That's pretty good.
If that bus was 10 yards of him, Hackenberg, he would miss. As a Penn State fan, absolutely frustrating. Little bubble screens and stuff. The dude would miss the pass by 5 yards. It was infuriating how inaccurate he is on close passes.
I agree.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking, although it's like you said, if somebody, I just don't see quarterbacks in this draft falling that far. Maybe it'll happen. It just seems like a quarterback thin draft where guys are going to get overdrafted rather than under.
Right.
So, but this is something we'll talk about when we get into the war room section of our podcast today. I'm sure there are going to be some late round quarterback names that come up that might be kind of interesting to talk about. But I just thought that maybe is worth mentioning. I just would like to. I'll pat myself on the back for a second in saying that Ramon Foster would be back and that they value his leadership over, maybe his limitations on the football field. But do you guys think, other than maybe looking for somebody that might be a left tackle of the future, that they're really looking guard? Because I see a lot of people mocking guard-only prospects to the Steelers, and with DeCastro and Foster and the availability of guards in general, it just seems like that's not something they're really high on. Perch, maybe you can set me straight.
I think they're going to go round 5 through 7. They're going to take a Munchak project of a guy who's athletic, that he thinks he can coach up to be a versatile guy, back up across the line. Round 5, 6, 7, they'll probably take some offensive line body, and that'll be the end of it. So I've seen people mock. I forget whose mock draft it was. I'd like to name them so I can shame them a little bit. But they had the Steelers drafting a guard in the 1st round to replace DeCastro because his contract is up. Which brings me to another point. The Steelers are $3.5 million underneath the salary cap with no dead money into next year. Let me repeat that. For the first time, we don't have a big dead money contract hanging over our heads going into next year, and Lawrence Timmons' contract is up too. The Steelers are in the best salary cap position they've been in a hell of a long time. So some of that money is obviously going to go to DeCastro. Some of it's probably going to go to Bell. Antonio Brown probably gets extended and reworked at some point, which will eat up some of that money. But they're in excellent position for the first time without dead money hanging over their heads now that they got rid of Cortez Allen and didn't kick the can down the road on his contract. So that's one of the off-season developments I really wanted to touch on was they finally have cleaned off the books, and they're good and clean and clear, and they're going to extend DeCastro. But anybody who thinks they're going to draft a guard in round 1, 2, or 3, I think is a little bit nuts. Watch them go do it now, but I think there's no way.
Yeah. There is no way they'll do it. The value there is there's not. I think that you can get a guard in the 5th or 6th round that'll be better than a Whitehair or a Josh Garnett, who universally are the two top offensive guards, on the board. And I completely agree with you that they're going to look to add a swing, someone that can play, maybe both guards, maybe both tackles. So I'll just throw a name out there, Spencer Drango from Baylor. 30 words, Baylor offensive lineman. First round. You like him?
Yeah, I do. I've liked him for years.
I like him a lot, too. The thing that I like about him is I don't think he can play left tackle in the NFL, but I think he could be one hell of an offensive guard or a right tackle because he's nasty, and he just, if you touch the quarterback, he wanted to fucking kill you. If his guy even tried to dive on the pow for the running back, he wanted to kill you. He cared. He competed. And that's all offensive line play is about, is basically you're giving for somebody else. I mean, we could be nasty about this, but that is the job of an offensive lineman, is to make other people great. That offense, and that's why I actually believe Villanueva may have a future, just because of the background and stuff like that. And he does have tools to work with. And, I read, 10 days ago that supposedly he's basically just trying to get all the coaching and, like, all the work he can get to be a better player. So.
Well, they certainly, Perch, it seemed like they certainly ran, they tried to get Beecham, theoretically. They brought in Ryan Harris and so on and so forth. It doesn't look like they're exactly handing the job to Villanueva.
Well, I mean, you've seen how many of the last 5 or 10 years have we used more than one left tackle in a game? So even if they do trust Villanueva to some extent, they needed a good number 2. And Mike Adams, if he does get healthy and get his head on straight, is probably better suited at right tackle if he even does make the roster. So they needed that backup. Ryan Harris, to me, was just perfect. He's a guy that can come in and compete. He's got experience at left tackle, experience at right tackle. I think he'd be okay if he lost the starting job and was a backup for the year and a role player. And if somebody did get hurt, he would fill in and do a very, very good job. So that's what they needed. They didn't spend a lot of money on the guy or the position. They got that third swing guy. They've got a safety net now, and they can move on with their draft needs to go attack the defense.
Hey, I'd just like to say, I mean, despite the fact that, they had a little bit of a kicker panic in camp last year, which, not really sure what that was all about. That seemed like an aberration to some really great moves in the last 12 months or so for the Pittsburgh Steelers front office. I feel like they're pro personnel scouting, like the person that looks at players on other teams and says how they would, like if this guy becomes available, we'd be interested in him and so on and so forth. That, man, they're on a roll kind of. Even just role players that they brought in. The D'Angelo Williams thing comes to mind immediately. But it sort of feels like that they're, for the criticisms we might have of them, I just want to take a second to praise them because I, kind of just feel like that they have kind of turned it around a little bit recently. I had a little bit of a dead period for a couple of years where things didn't go so well for them and the Cam Thomases of the world. But it seems like they're doing a little bit on a hot streak right now. At any rate, gents, let's move on. Let's talk about the NFL draft in general. And to that end, the players that are going to be gone before the Steelers get there, just for a second to talk about the big names in case there's anybody that you especially like or don't like in that top 15 for certain range, players that will absolutely be gone. You guys want to take a stand on the quarterbacks?
I think Goff's going number 1. I think that Wentz is going to probably end up probably going to San Francisco. And I think people say that you could have a third quarterback, maybe jump up. I don't see it. I don't know what the Rams were thinking, to be honest with you. I think they gave up a lot to get Goff.
It feels like they gave up everything that they kind of fleeced Washington to give away the pick that became Robert Griffin, and then they just gave all that back to Tennessee that did the same thing. Maybe they'd have been better off just taking Robert Griffin and having more picks now. But I don't know. I'm sort of on the. I don't think I like either one of them train. I mean, I like them as both Wentz and Goff as guys that will stick in the NFL. I don't think they're terrible, but I'm not sure either one of them is a superstar quarterback. Goff particularly reminds me of like more of a game manager type. Go ahead, Perch.
To me, it's just like what FC said. For the Rams to give up that much, I mean, they basically gave up the world for what you would do for an Andrew Luck or we laugh at RG3 now, but when he came out too, he was another guy that we thought was outstanding athlete, tremendous arm, tremendously accurate. He was a can't miss sort of guy. Nobody is saying that either of these guys are can't miss. They're both, well, yeah, they kind of look like first-round quarterbacks, but they've got some warts and we're not sure. I could see you drafting one in the top 10 if you needed a quarterback. I can't see you giving up that haul that the Rams gave up. To me, I think they're moving to L.A. and they have to have a name and a quarterback and a young guy to get excited about and to draw fans in, and they did it for that more than for football reasons. So, yeah, I think that's going to hurt them. And I really liked what they did building that defense and stockpiling those picks, but now they gave it all away, and I think they're destined to toil in mediocrity just because of the stupid deal they made.
Yeah. FC, is Paxton Lynch the guy that played against Mississippi and played out of his mind, or is he the guy that played against Auburn and looked unbelievably bad?
Somewhere in between the two. I won't be shocked if he's the best quarterback that comes out of the class, but I don't want to be the guy that drafts him. That type of deal. Because you watch that old Miss tape, and people can. It's the fun thing to do is to knock, Robert Nietzsche and to knock, the SEC defenses. But you face some pretty good athletes, and that Alabama team, there's going to be, a lot of really high drafted players. And I like, I really do, but I don't want to be the guy that spends the first round pick on him.
Yeah. I mean, I sort of feel like the Auburn game exposed the big hole in his game, which is he's not a developed quarterback at going through his read progressions and, playing sort of that more cerebral game. But who really wasn't that great at that when he came out either is Ben Roethlisberger or for that matter, Joe Flacco. Like, to me, I look at Paxton Lynch, what he did in college, and I compare it to what Joe Flacco did. And they both have similar talent. They're both bigger dudes with big arms and with some balls to their game. And Paxton Lynch maybe moves a little bit better, and his record, statistically, what he did in college and who he did it against is superior to Flacco. So I don't understand. If somebody was brave enough to draft Joe Flacco out of Delaware, I assume that somebody's going to look at Paxton Lynch and think he's got possibilities as well. But that's what someday soon we're going to be in the position, unfortunately, of drafting a quarterback high, and we're going to be in the same boat as everybody else, having to not make a crucial mistake. Anyway, enough about quarterbacks. Anybody else in particular you think is really truly great in this draft? Like who's the best player in this draft in your opinion?
I'll throw Tunsil and Ramsey. I think are the guys that stand out as being rare. Tunsil's athleticism, I think, at left tackle, he's going to be one of those 10-year guys. It's a pretty regular Pro Bowl sort of left tackle. I think that at worst he's a good starter. At best he's a great one. Ramsey, you just don't see many guys with the combination of skills that he has athletically and football skills. After that, I don't see many great players in this draft. I mean, you get some good players after that. Bosa, I think, will be a solid, defensive end in a 4-3. But the other guys are hit and miss or just good, solid first-rounders. I don't see any really elite jump-off-the-page guys. Maybe you guys disagree, but those are the two, to me, that kind of stand out of the crop.
So I know. Well, go ahead, hit us, because I know you hate everybody apparently in this draft.
I don't hate everybody. I there's a lot of guys. I think Jalen Ramsey is far and away the best player, best talent in this draft. My problem with Tunsil, I think he is a phenomenal athlete. I think he's going to be a phenomenal pass protector. I think he is poor to average in the run game. I know that's not a big thing to people. And the thing that scares me the most is you look at Ole Miss's record with him at left tackle, and you look at Ole Miss's record with Fawn Cooper, a Bowling Green transfer who moved to left tackle, then flipped over to right tackle when Tunsil came back. And I like Tunsil, I really do. And I think that Perch is going to be right, but I'm not 100% about physicality. I'll put it this way. I know in my heart of hearts that Ronnie Stanley's going to bust from Notre Dame.
Wow.
He shows the characteristics of a bust player. On the other hand, if you took away the combine and you just watched film, if you just watched a player play football, I think the best second player in this draft is Joey Bosa. He shows.
Is he an end or is he a linebacker? What do you think?
He's an end. I think he's an end in a 4-3 or a 3-4. As funny as that sounds, I think Joey Bosa is a little bit of. This is going to be pushing a little bit. He's a little bit of Jared Allen, who just retired, a young Jared Allen, and I think that he is one of the few players that's under 275 pounds that can play a game similar to that of Bruce Smith, where he can hold up if you ask him to against the run, because how well he understands leverage and how well he positions himself, to take on blockers. I did not like Bosa as much until I watched more of the play and what he was asked to do. Adolphus Washington should have had 25 fucking sacks at for Ohio State, considering how much attention that Joey Bosa got. You look at Darren Lee, who had good production at Ohio State, and you see the sack numbers. And I'm not taking anything away from Darren Lee because I think he's going to be a good football player. It's just you had 2 to 3 blockers accounting for Bosa every single snap. But I'll say Jalen Ramsey without a doubt is the best player in this draft.
Oh, there you go. Well, I'm going to say a guy that I don't think is necessarily the best player in this draft, but somebody who I think will eventually be maybe first or second best at his position out of this draft that nobody really talks that much about. I think Josh Doxson from TCU as a receiver is just the right combination of the toughness and speed and, just does all the little things that winners do. You know what I mean? He doesn't sulk. He makes a big play when you need a big play. I love guys who, whenever they're desperate and they turn to you, it's like NBA guys who are just, their skill is, like Carmelo Anthony's a perfect example. He can't really do anything in the NBA well, except if you need a basket with the shot clock expiring, or at the end of the game when you're desperate and you get into his hands, he will score. And that's the thing about Josh Doxson. He will come up big at the right time. I actually also like. I like the other guys. I was a big fan before his injury of Laquan Treadwell, and I like Michael Thomas out of Ohio State even. But to me, because I think Michael Thomas didn't really have to work that hard in college because they had so many other options and weapons. But Josh Doxson to me is the guy that, he's the kind of guy you want to have on your team. Anyway, that's my take. Anything else before?
He's my number 1 wide receiver, if that makes you.
It does indeed.
And how about this? I have Michael Thomas as my number 2. I have Treadwell as my number 3. Will Fuller is my number 4. Notice what name you haven't heard yet. Corey Coleman from Baylor. Not a fan.
Yeah, so Perch, to explain this to me, how is it that our offensive coordinator, who I think said this in a genuine moment, told Corey Coleman just that he was his favorite player in the entire draft, quote unquote?
I missed that quote, but I obviously like Corey Coleman more than FC does. I think he's a nice route runner. He does all the little things well. I think he's a guy that kind of indexes what the Steelers' receiving profile typically has been. So that's one we'll have to disagree on and watch and see how he turns out.
I'm the one that feels actually a little bit better than the other people, and I'm not really knocking Corey Coleman. I've heard Corey Coleman is a top 10 pick in this year's draft.
I think he's bottom of the first round is where he belongs.
Okay, and that's not horrible. I mean, I'm saying I would put him somewhere between maybe 28 and 35. So I don't want to really be hammering the guy. He's not a top 10 pick, in my opinion.
No, I mean, it's just you don't really draft receivers under, receivers and corners. If they're at 5'11" or under, they probably should be in the top half of the first round, if the first round at all. So.
Yeah, well, there you go. I think maybe I could see Corey Coleman fitting the catch and run kind of philosophy that our offensive coordinator is sort of big on. But yeah, I'm just not sure compared to you look at what the Steelers' issues are on offense. If they're going to bring a wide receiver in who they expect to contribute at all this year versus next year, I'd really like to get somebody that has a nose for the goal line, a guy that you can turn to on third down, and it's dependable to catch the ball for, past the sticks. But they don't really necessarily like to do things that way. He's our coordinator is definitely more of a guy to throw it under the sticks and put it in the hands of somebody to run past the sticks for a first down or to run into the end zone. So it is what it is. I guess, it's just a question of, Perch, you get to play GM today, so you can choose the guys that you like. But I suppose that's
well, let's get to it already.
Yeah, exactly. So it's that time, gentlemen. It is. This is it. I get actually kind of excited. This is our moment here for. We are going to go the most exciting moment of our year, which is we get to simulate the Steelers' war room for the NFL draft, and it's pretty exciting, actually. We get to pretend that we are discussing every pick for the Steelers in this draft and make our selections. And what will happen is FC, if he's a gamer, will take on the offense, which is going to be the pit of disappointment this year in the draft. But at least we get to hear about players that we haven't talked about a lot to death on the SteelerFury website because, obviously talking about Steelers draft, we've been all over the defense. So FC is going to present some offensive players at each round. And I, in a twist, I'm going to be Todd Haley this year and stand on the table for my guys. Or excuse me, I'll be Keith Butler this year, stand on the table for the defensive side. And then Perch will play Kevin Colbert, maybe with more hair. Perch, you have more hair than Colbert?
Oh, thank God, yes.
I'm catching them. I got to be honest with you. I'm catching them. Motherfucker.
At any rate,
I really go ball, but
I'd like to say I am. I don't know if I'm catching him because I'm sort of stuck in about the last 15 years in a holding pattern that's not good. It's not a good look. That's where I am. And those of you who saw me at the head of the show will know what I'm talking about. Anyway. Gentlemen, let's start with round one. And I mean, if you want to propose a guy who is close to being available at 25, that's totally fine. And then we'll make a call as to whether or not they're really available. And you're going to have to really wow us to come up with an offensive choice in the first round.
Right.
I might do
it. We'll throw out one name because I think it's probably the closest that we might be able to come will be Taylor Decker, offensive tackle, Ohio State, and it's the only position that I could see. I understand we just signed Ryan Harris, and it's the only guy with true value in offense that I could see falling. And I'm not even going to sit there. I'm just basically now going outside to get a honey bun and a coffee. I'm really not eating.
Well, let's start with a guy that I know will, in fact, be there. Sorry, I'm just looking for his highlights right now. And that is, the guy I was going to talk about, Carl Joseph, safety out of West Virginia. I think we know what the downsides are. He had an ACL injury, which, his status currently is supposedly he is ready for camp. He's running at nearly full speed now. In fact, he wanted to run the 40 at West Virginia's Pro Day, which was like a week to 10 days ago. And insurance, the doctors at the university wouldn't clear him to run. But he's, and he's a Troy Polamalu or Earl Thomas sized. He's not a big safety. And FC, just to get back to what you said about the Steelers safety situation, that they're a little bit interchangeable. But here's the thing. You got to have a pairing, though. And if you have Mike Mitchell on one side who's kind of playing, the true safety role, he's the last line of defense. my opinion is you need a guy opposite from him who is a playmaker, who can take advantage of the fact that sometimes he'll be lined up close to the line of scrimmage. Sometimes he's going to cover a guy one-on-one in the slot. Sometimes he's playing his zone defense and covering half the field. And to me, Karl Joseph is the best guy in this draft at doing that. You combine that with he's an extremely high football character guy who's also his ability to diagnose plays and trust his instincts are really good. He's a tackler. He's not a guy who just submarines and doesn't wrap up. He doesn't lead with his head, which is a Troy Polamalu thing, that you could see even going back into college might be an issue for him. He's my number one guy I'm going to recommend. Aside from him, Perch, if you're not into, Karl Joseph for some reason as being a fit for this team, if you want to talk about defensive tackles, I don't think Billings is going to be available, but if he were to be available, I do like him as a fit for what, this versatile defensive tackle type that they're looking for. I don't think he's going to be a true nose tackle type, but I also think that he gives you enough snaps at that to be worthwhile. And you certainly have to love his hustle running down the field, as you can see on the highlight I'm just showing right there. For an interior defensive guy, he definitely plays hard every play. He brings you a lot of stuff. He's got a little length. He's not the tallest guy, but he looks like a guy with a sort of a longer arm length who uses his hands really effectively. That's my favorite part of his game. He gets his hands up early, gets into the blockers, and is able to make a lot of headway with that generally. So he would be a guy that I would have to consider at this point. And the other guy, I'm not sure that I personally can jump on the table for him. But Robert, is it Kenriche? How do you say his name?
Yeah.
He from Mississippi. I would say he's got the talent. It's all about the off the field stuff and the sort of internal motor stuff for him. I don't know. I don't know if that's something to consider. On sheer talent alone and his ability and the flashes that he gives you, I could say that's a guy to pick or at least consider at this point. Of the corners, I suspect that in real life, William Jackson and Alexander are going to be gone at this point. I don't love Alexander as a fit for the Steelers. I'm not sure about his physicality. And Jackson, I think, is a really terrific player. Somebody that during last year's draft, I mentioned him as a guy that coming, in this year's draft that I thought would be a really good candidate. He's got size. He plays in a zone. He jumps up on the ball underneath him as well as anybody in the draft at corner, especially somebody of his size is great at that. Where he's lacking a little bit is he doesn't really have that change of direction skill that Ike Taylor had. That would allow him to just shadow a guy all over the field that changes directions a lot. So that's a bit of a red flag with him. And Eli Apple, I just don't see him as a draftable player for the Steelers. Yeah, he's getting mocked to them a lot, but I don't see that happening. I feel like he's afraid of contact.
I'll stop you guys there and fill you on some information here. Karl Joseph is available. Mackenzie Alexander is available. Taylor Decker is available. And Billings just went one pick earlier. So narrowing it down from there, if we're going to go ahead and make a first-round pick as we're on the clock, I'm going to look at Alexander. Go ahead.
I'm just going to tell you that I didn't really bang the table fully, so I just gave you all those. But to me, Karl Joseph is at least a top 15 player in this draft. If he hadn't had a knee injury, he'd be drafted where Earl Thomas or Troy Polamalu was drafted. He's that kind of special player, and he would be the one guy in this draft I would literally stand on the table for. There you go.
Okay, yeah. So as we look at it, and Kondichi is got too many red flags. I can't see taking a first-round flyer on that guy. No matter how talented he is, he's got character flags on and off the field, so he's gone. Mackenzie Alexander is supposed to be a very rough personality character that rubbed a lot of people the wrong way down at Clemson. And he wasn't a guy who really got interceptions in college. Talented guy, physical, got good, the physical.
0 fumble recovers. 0 forced fumbles.
Yeah,
0 interceptions.
He's got the physical makeup, and he's not the first-round pick. So that leaves us down to Taylor Decker, who's going to be a solid tackle in the NFL, and Carl Joseph. Joseph, his freshman year, was the defensive player of the year for West Virginia. That was a true freshman. His true sophomore year, he was all Big 12. His junior year, he led the nation in interceptions before he got injured. He's the biggest need for the Steelers that we talked about earlier is probably going to be a safety, and he's clearly the best safety in the class. I think that has to be the pick here. Round 1, Steelers are on the clock. We punch in Carl Joseph, safety, West Virginia.
Then I'll add something in real quick. I've been doing this for almost 30 years. I've loved the draft. I've been doing this since I was like 11, 12 years old. I have never seen or scouted a better safety in the college level than Carl Joseph. So
thank you. I'm so glad that I'm not totally crazy because I flipped for this guy months ago and just thought, I don't understand how people have him in the 60s.
So incredible to me. He covered Sterling Shepard, man coverage. Yeah, Sterling Shepard, man coverage, and blanket him. I mean, I think if he comes back to the same level, I think he can play corner. He could play corner in a pinch. I know that sounds ridiculous. He could play corner in a pinch. He's very good.
Yeah, it's like just the other guys. There's some other really good safeties in this draft. A guy that Kevin Byard from Middle Tennessee State, Deion Bush, guys that have talent. But the thing is, Joseph can cover half the field as a deep safety effectively, as you saw against Oklahoma. He can cover slot guys in the slot. I think the only question I would have is, how is he going to be dominant against tight ends in the slot? Maybe not, but I think he can do a good enough job at that and be great at the other things. So anyway, you go ahead, FC. You were going to say something else.
Kevin Byard, I mentioned him probably third week of the season, like in our regular season podcast. Safety. I didn't know how to say his last name because every film I seen on him was with no audio, was just the plays. And that's why I was coughing to clear my throat. He has 20-some-odd interceptions. Yeah, definitely big fan as well.
Yeah, for a big guy. Yeah, well, the thing is, if we miss out on Joseph for some reason, he feels like a guy that might work. Anyway, let's move on to the second round. Perch. I guess FC, you want me to go first this time?
Yep.
Yeah, go ahead.
You are first. We got B2 Butler going first.
Okay, well, I'm a big believer that edge rushers have to meet a certain criteria to be worthy of being picked in the first couple of rounds, first, second, third round even. I don't know if this guy...
Malik Calhoun is gone.
Okay, Calhoun is gone. What about a guy from Oklahoma that was... Yeah, Charles Tapper, to me, is a cat who was used... He's one of those, it reminds me of some other college players you'll see where because he was a really good player as a defensive lineman and versatile, they had him playing interior line. I mean, the guy is not a defensive tackle by any stretch of the imagination. He's an end or even a stand-up edge guy. But because he was capable of doing that, they put him in that position. I feel like he has absolutely outstanding speed. He's a real speed guy with movement skills at his size that you just don't find in a guy who's 265, 266, whatever he is. He's not the tallest guy. He's like 6'2.5" or something like that. But for me, if you're looking for a guy to pair, I talked about safety pairs. If you're looking for a guy to pair with Bud Dupree as a guy who potentially is very good against the run, stout enough to hold a point as an outside linebacker. Who can also get to the passer with the speed and spin move. He ran a 4.56 or something crazy like that in terms of straight line speed. And he also, can put his hand down and play defensive end for you in a 4-3 look or even a nickel look because he has that experience playing on the interior. I really like him. There's another pass rusher or two later in the draft that I like. So if you're not inclined to go pass rusher, it's not your last chance to get somebody, but it's probably the last chance to get somebody from a Power 5 conference who I really believe in could step in and be an edge player here. So he's one guy I'll definitely mention. In addition to that, say again?
He is available, so we can put him on the list.
He is available. Okay, and I guess I would say, I think it's a sort of a dead area for cornerbacks. I know cornerbacks definitely a need at this stage. For the nose tackle, it has a sort of flexibility. I'm kind of thinking Kenny Clark from UCLA is going to be in this category, and I like him. Okay, he's a sort of a guy who's good at everything, maybe not great at any particular thing, but I guess the other guy I'm going to recommend at this spot would be Javon Hargrave from South Carolina State. He's not the biggest dude. In fact, when you saw him at the Senior Bowl, he's more fireplug shaped, but he's got a crazy ability, a burst or something. I'm not sure what it is physically about his game, or if he's just got a certain kind of motor or something. But he's almost impossible to stop when he's on, and maybe because he gets underneath bigger defenders. But even when he faced the higher level guys at the Senior Bowl, he was a little bit of a terror and almost impossible to block one-on-one. I could see Javon Hargrave. I don't know if he's a second rounder or he's a fringe second round guy, maybe third round guy. But as FC said, there's a limited number of guys in this draft who can do that thing. If you think he's big enough or bad enough, he'd be my second guy that I'd recommend. And other than that, I'll turn it over to FC. I'm not sure I have anybody else I think is worthy of a second round.
FC Haley, what you got for me, bud?
Okay, we're going to have a little bit of anarchy. I'm going to pass on the offense, and I'm going to throw out 2 defensive tackles' names. Austin Johnson from Penn State. Never seen a guy with a better fucking motor and that big of a body. And we'll go with Mr. Third Leg, Mr. Chris Jones from Mississippi State, who I don't know if B2B was being sarcastic whenever he had him in his little draft list there. But wow, is he a good football player.
I just forgot about Chris Jones because I'm thinking of him as being gone in the first round now or gone before the Steelers pick in round 2. But yeah, I like that player. And I also forgot to mention maybe Bronson Kafusi from BYU, who also I have him as a third rounder, but I mean he might in the real life go in round 2. So go ahead, FC. That's a good suggestion though, Austin Johnson and Chris Jones.
Yeah, and I can't offer you nobody on offense. I mean, I could be sarcastic and say like Tyler Boyd, who I really like, but I don't necessarily think that it's a great. And I think that we have far more pressing needs.
Well, let me ask you, FC, quick question. Where do you see Malcolm Mitchell going in this draft?
Wow. God, looking for the needs. I think someone's going to take him probably in the 5th round.
Okay, so we're not in danger of losing him. Okay.
No. He's had 2 ACLs. And the funny thing is he may end up being a better cornerback than wide receiver. And I know that sounds crazy to talk about switching a guy's position. He is really dynamic and phenomenal. I literally have to sit and watch Georgia football games with my wife. And, I mean, he's really a good player. Let me put it this way. Every bit as good of a player as, like, say, Chris Conley was, who I actually also loved from the University of Georgia last year. It's one of the big reasons why I thought Mark Richt should have been fired was because of how little out of some of the talent that he got. Performance of the talent that he actually had on his roster.
So, Perch, first of all, let's start with Chris Jones. Is he available?
That's the thing. You want to say no, but Stephon Tuitt should have gone in the first round that year too, and I think Stephon Tuitt was a better prospect than this guy is. Although I like Chris Jones, and I would definitely take him if he's there at this spot. So I'm on the fence. Maybe he's there, maybe he's not. Maybe we just say he's gone for reality's sake and say that player has been taken. Which brings us down to Austin Johnson, Hargrave, and Tapper. I think the defensive tackle spot is the bigger need. You guys make one final argument either way, Hargrave or Johnson. That's kind of what we're looking at.
I would say from Hargrave's standpoint, if what you're looking for is a move to more 4-3 looks and to get a guy who can give you a few snaps at nose tackle, but mostly will operate as a backup pass rusher in the nickel and to do a little bit more 1-tech, 3-tech look, Javon Hargrave is like Aaron Donald Jr. He would definitely fit that role pretty well.
See any argument either way?
I can't argue for Austin Johnson, but I'm supposed to argue for offense. The one thing I'll say is Austin
Doesn't matter
Johnson,
what you think. Javon Hargrave is the 2nd-round pick. I think the Steelers. To me, I think that what the thought process is to get Hayward and Tuitt off the field more in sub-package football. And in order to do that, you need that defensive tackle who can penetrate on the interior side, and that's exactly what Hargrave is. So even though he's not traditional, even though he might not be a base down guy, he's a guy that's going to greatly improve the pass rush just by having his body in there and help that rotation with the two guys that we already have that we think are stars in Tuitt and Hayward. So second-round pick, defensive tackle, Javon Hargrave. Third round, we will start with FC Haley, and this is your area to shine here. Third round, Kevin Colbert, loves some skill. What do you got?
Well, I'm probably not going to get to people's favorite position here, but
I really, really, really like Kenyon Drake from Alabama. Running back, kick returner, slot wide receiver. Very low mileage on the wheels. Talking, legitimate 4.5 guy and a 215-pound body. You can hit him with a cement truck. He ain't going to fumble. Great pass blocker. You're looking at a poor man's Le'Veon Bell. Le'Veon Bell oft-injured. You have, D'Angelo Williams, who's a great find, but it's going to be 35 years of age. If we're not thrilled about going with running back in the third round, and I can understand why you might be a little bit leery. We do have some issues with Martavius Bryant, and I understand that we're looking to maybe probably going to have to replace Marcus Sweet, like our brilliant GM Kevin Colbert said a moment ago. And that's when you get into a very interesting area of third round wide receivers. This Pharaoh Cooper drop. Are you willing to take the chance on a Braxton Miller developing? The player that I don't love, but I like, and I can see having a solid NFL career, is Rashard Higgins. Now, he doesn't have the great pure speed that you might be looking for, but he's a great route runner in very reliable hands. If I had to get up on the table and pound for two players right here, I'd probably pound my shoe. If Braxton Miller falls, I don't think he's going to be there. I'm going to pound my shoe for Kenyon Drake, running back, Alabama.
Yeah, well, I mean, on the defensive side, I would say it's a little bit early for the corners that I like in the next wave, meaning that I think they're both going to be available round 4 and beyond. And Miles Killebrew was a player I had listed here, but since we picked Joseph, that doesn't seem to be such a good fit. I kind of think Bronson Kafusi or Roy Robertson Harris. Harris is I think a borderline selection for round 3. There's been some talk about him going round 4. It's one of those cats that half the people don't have him on their board because he's sort of a one-year wonder, and the other half have him, as maybe a 4th round pick. Bronson Kafusi and Roy Robertson Harris are very sort of similar in that they're these hybrid players. I think the Steelers are looking for as edge rushers, somebody that can put their hand down in a 4-3 look, or also stand up and play the edge and do a little bit of everything for them. If you like Kafusi, he's a little bit older. I'm not sure I can sell you hard on that. And I may be like Roy Robertson Harris a little bit better than Kafusi, but I like Kafusi, and he is had some really great results this year and great athleticism. That's mainly if you want to get into corners and reach a little bit. I'm definitely game to talk more about that. I don't know where your head's at, Kevin. Tell us.
Throw me some corner names. Let's see what we can get on the board here.
Okay. I actually like Rashard Robinson from LSU. I think he's probably in real life a 4th round pick that might go before the Steelers' 4th round pick.
Character flag, though.
Definitely a character flag. He did, however, get the blessing of his former coaches, to come back to the pro day, and they even said about him that they feel like he, it was like a more of an immaturity thing than necessarily like a criminal kind of a character issue. And it was never about anything on the field. It was more like, somehow he just didn't really listen to them very well as a 19-year-old, which there's a lot of 19-year-olds that fit that description. Here's the thing I like about him as a fit. To me, he looks and reminds so much of young Ike Taylor. Ike Taylor, when he first came out, was built almost exactly like Rashard Robinson, and he was a very similar kind of player. similar speed, similar length, the way he, the style of football that he likes to play. So to me, that means he's not a first-round pick, but he's a guy in the third or fourth round that has the raw tools. And, he matched up, the famous game that he played as a sophomore against a very experienced senior, Mike Evans, was a game where Mike Evans literally, had to throw a shoulder into him to get him off in terms of coverage to create room and stuff that he's probably not allowed to do by those strict rules. But still, despite that, Rashard Robinson played pretty well against him and didn't really give up very much. And then, the next guy you might consider is Cyrus Jones. To me, Cyrus Jones is not out of Alabama, is not he's not the best corner necessarily available at this spot, but he adds something in terms of as a punt returner and as a special teams guy that in reality, would add something to this team. My problem with adding him really more than anything is that he doesn't complement the group of corners that we have. As of right now, I think, I'm not sure, I've forgotten exactly. I guess Grant, if you see him as a corner and not as a safety, is the tallest guy that they have available, or Cockrell, but they don't really have they have sort of a lot of guys who are sort of smaller in stature. Feel like I'd like to have at least one guy in the fold who's bigger. Maybe you can get a bigger guy later. But certainly from a standpoint of a return guy and a guy with some upside who's played tough competition, Cyrus Jones would fit that description. Those are my next two guys.
Let me throw you one more name, and you guys can kind of debate it. Kafusi versus Jihad Ward here in the third round.
Oh, my God. I would think Ward would be gone. If Ward's not gone, I sprint to pick up.
Yeah, I'm with Jihad Ward is the name I'm throwing out. I think he is still available here in the third round, so you guys make a case.
Well, hang on a second. I think I was with FC, but now I'm looking at like CBS. He looks to be available. I'm sorry, I thought he'd be totally gone. I think I'd make a case that he's a better choice than anybody, clearly a better choice than anybody other than Kafusi, and they're just different players. To me, Ward is more like a guy who's going to be your 5 tech, who'll give you some snaps as a penetrating interior guy, as opposed to the other way around. Like Billings is a guy who's an interior guy who can give you some snaps, maybe further outside along the line. Ward is like counterpart to that, to me.
Up off a basketball, not the rim, the top of the backboard. He did 298 pounds, jumped up, grabbed the top of the fucking backboard, and did pull-ups.
Yeah, that's not jumping out of a pool, but I would pay to see that. That's pretty good.
Oh, you're wrong, Gilbert.
No, sorry, friends. I didn't mean to drop the ball.
Defensive end, Illinois, third-round pick.
Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to drop the ball. I thought he was unavailable, so I didn't even get in.
No, he was there. He's going to be right in this range. So let's move on to the fourth round.
I like that choice.
FC Haley, give us some sugar here. Fourth round.
Do we even have a fourth-round pick? I know that we do. This is where it's going to get interesting. Okay, I'm going to go to an area where no one likes to talk about until they suck, and that's going to be the offensive line. And I know the rankings, they have him as a fifth-round pick. I don't buy it. I'm going to bang the table right now for my guy, Spencer Drango from Baylor. He, in a pinch, could play left tackle. I think he might be able to play left tackle, not even in a pinch. He can play every other position across the offensive line, including center. He's very smart. He checks every box that somebody would want to have checked, except for he played in what's called a gimmick offense, where they had the weird offensive line spreads, meaning they lined up in a little different way with wide gaps. So it's not, people don't like it in the NFL, and they've had many busts, but he's a very good football player, and he's a 4-year starter, and he started at left tackle for a team that threw the ball as much as any team in college football. And he will be a great Steeler because he just is everything that this team would need if they do have a Ramon Foster go down or a David DeCastro go down, I think that he could actually maybe take in a fair competition would maybe be able to beat Ramon Foster out. I think he would be a better option as our second center than Cody Wallace because he has played the pivot. I love the kid and I love the player. It's the only one I'm going to give you. Spencer Durango, offensive guard, offensive tackle, Baylor.
All right, there, Beta Butler. I need some corners here. Give me some names of corners.
I gotcha. Well, let's go with the small school guy who, to me, we're in a tough spot here at this pick because everybody, you have 2 full rounds, almost 3 to go through before you get to the Steelers' next pick, meaning if you want anybody who's projected to go in this range, this is it, right? So to me, this Mike Jordan from Missouri Western, small school guy, but big. He did what you're supposed to do at the small level, which is you're supposed to dominate. He had something like 64 pass breakups, just an insane amount of ability to play the ball. He's not, we're used to accustomed to seeing guys in Pittsburgh who, will give up catches in front of them and tackle the catch. And he's capable of tackling the catch. He's a very physical player, but he's also capable of attacking those plays and frequently getting a hand on the ball. That's a skill that, it's hard to complain about. He's also got some size. He's, a 6-footer, solidly built corner. So he's one guy I would definitely consider. I think it's possible Rashard Robinson is still available. I told you a little bit on him the last pick. But if you're not,
he's gone.
He's gone now. Okay, so the next guy then for me is Kalen Reed from Southern Mississippi. I think Kalen Reed is. I don't know. I watch him and I wonder what anybody else doesn't see in this player. I mean, he's got everything except for, super traditional size. I mean, I think he's a nearly 5'11". He's like a 5'10 3/4, kind of guy. But you see this, those of you who can see YouTube and see the highlight he had for interception against Charlotte, one-hander, where he undercut a deep route and, one-handed this ball. That's not the only thing that the kid did, but he's got a unique combination of ability to play the ball in the air and ball skills. He's sort of like a Willie Gay type player in stature and how he plays the game in zone, but he's capable of a little bit more explosion, taking the ball away. He's a much better athlete than Willie Gay is. Had something like a 42-inch vertical. He's a real athlete that's sort of buried because he plays at Southern Miss and not at a bigger school. But I love his game. Probably the reality is he might be still available. In fact, likely will still be available in the real draft in round 6. But if you want to be absolutely sure,
a guy that you might not look at as still being here, but maybe you just don't like. Jonathan Jones from Auburn, a guy that tested off the chart. He's another shrimpy corner, but William Gay is getting long in the tooth, and this guy's a pretty good nickel corner. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, it's simply that. I think he's, to me, the real problem that we have on the team is outside corner with physicality. That's a bigger issue than bringing a slot corner. And I say that because, they're a little bit easier to find. And I don't think, Willie Gay may not be done, but maybe close to being done. But I would say in a pinch, Senquez Golden, who I think is really an outside corner, could play the slot. I think it's just more like the guy that the bar has to be. Can they outperform Ross Cockrell and win a job from him? So to me, in order to do that, you have to be capable of playing physical receivers and being a little bit more physical in the run game. And to me, I'm not sure Jonathan Jones fits that. He's a terrific slot guy. I just don't ever see him playing the outside.
Yeah, but we'll end on that note there. You mentioned physicality a number of times, and when in doubt, wise man once said, go with the bigger player. To me, I think it's the best guy on the board. There's a bunch of corners that can go here, but they're not a whole lot different than we're going to find in round 5 or 6. Spencer Durango, offensive line, Baylor, is our 4th-round pick. which takes us to 2 picks in the 6th round. We'll start back to you, B to Butler. And give me, let's look at.
We have just the compensatory pick in 6 is all we got. We traded it away for a kicker, by the way, or Brandon.
Yeah, so 1/6
Boykin or somebody. Yeah.
Okay.
2 7s, 1 6 2 7s. We got that.
Okay, so we are going to look at. Give me some corners. I'll throw at a guy first. The Steelers have looked at that would fit that nickel role would be Tavon Young from Temple. Go ahead and give me some more guys you like in this range.
Still like my guy Kalen Reed here. I'll go back to him and probably still available from Southern Miss. I'll add to that another small school guy that the Steelers have expressed interest in. He was at the Combine. His name is Ryan Smith from FC. Correct me. Coastal Carolina, Central Carolina. Where's he from?
North Carolina A&T.
Oh, North Carolina A. Really? North Carolina A&T? Okay.
I believe so.
I thought it was North Carolina Central.
North Carolina Central, you're correct. I'm sorry.
Okay, so he's a guy that, yeah. He's a guy that has. Oh, he's gone. Okay.
Yeah, I like him. I was going to name him for the 4th or 5th round, but he just kind of falls right in that range. If you don't take him in 4, he's probably gone by 5.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, other than my man Kalen Reed, who I love, as I've said for the 5th time,
I actually love him too.
I would say that the next guy is Cheatham Norrells from Toledo. The thing about Cheatham Norrells is, he missed a whole season with an illness that was like a mystery illness that they finally figured out. It was not. At one time, it was life-threatening, and they were really concerned that he wasn't going to ever be able to. I mean, he wasn't going to live for 5 years, let alone play football again. He came all the way back. Was the captain and really one of the leaders of a pretty good Toledo team that took down some big guns. The game he had, particularly against Arkansas, who has a supposed NFL prospect at quarterback and some SEC talent. Cheatham Norrells was all over the field in that game and led his team to victory with a couple of pass breakups and some really terrific play. He's a guy that's got size. He's got athleticism. He's right along the lines of again Ryan Smith and Kalen Reed in terms of what he did his pro day. I'm not sure why people don't like him so much. I would say that he's probably got a pretty high floor as a cornerback, and on day 3, that feels like a decent pick. So I would say either Kalen Reed or Cheatham Norrells are the guys that I would like to see here.
Okay,
I could add one.
Give me some skill, buddy. You can add one more.
I'm going to add one corner in there. Since we took Mr. Joseph in the 1st round, I wouldn't mind maybe trying to get his partner in crime, Mr. Darryl Worley, starting cornerback from West Virginia. I
like him too.
The thing that's killing him is people that 10-yard of 1.62, that 10-yard split kills him. But he ran a 4.53. His 3 cones in the 6.88 range, shuttle 4.15. He broad jump 10.3, vertical 38, 15 bench reps. I like them. The thing that's kind of like got him in a little bit of trouble is he pled no contest to a misdemeanor assault 3 years ago, but it was an understandable assault. He caught somebody trying to steal off of him, and he beat his ass. Now, I'm thinking the Steelers may look at a running back. I love me some DeAndre Washington from Texas Tech. He's 5'7". He's 205 pounds. He checks every box that you want, except for he's a smurf. He's a small running back. But in the NFL over the last few years, some shorter running backs have had a lot of success. I love Bell, don't get me wrong, and I really am a big fan of D'Angelo Williams. But I remember fumbling a fucking football game away last year, and unfortunately, DeAndre Washington also had some fumbling issues. It's a real hard spot. This team needs defense. I can't bang the table too hard for DeAndre Washington. I have a 7th-round pick in mind. I think at this point I'd rather take a chance on the cornerback than, a Keith Marshall, who I also love, running back from the University of Georgia, but he's had 2 major knee injuries. If you're looking maybe for a little bit of a bigger back that can maybe give you something, that would be Keith Marshall from the University of Georgia. Marshawn Coppridge from Illinois State got a lot of thread, taking off those tires. 750 touches the last 2 years. So,
and he's got a super red flag as well.
Yeah.
sold pot, got a distribution
Yes.
charge and all that stuff. And not to say that he's necessarily a bad kid, but it was definitely not his finest
Absolutely.
hour.
I think we've got our guy here. Let's go in the 6th round to finally address that cornerback position. Let's take Kalen Reed from SMU.
Or Southern
To
Miss.
our 2 7th-rounders. Recap real quick our draft, what it looks like so far. We've got Carl Joseph, strong safety from West Virginia in the 1st. Javon Hargrave, a defensive tackle in the 2nd. Jihad Ward, defensive end in the 3rd. Spencer Drango, our 3rd big man in the row, offensive line from Baylor in the 4th. 5th-round pick got punted away. 6th round, we've got Kalen Reed, cornerback SMU, which leaves us the 7th round to do pretty much whatever we feel necessary. So let's go back to FC. FC, any 7th round guys you want to throw out?
I got this newsletter. It was from B2B State, and the name of the player was George Fant.
Oh yeah, baby.
I'm going to tell you a little story about George Fant, and he's a 6'7", 298-pound tight end. Ran a 4.7, 3.8, 40, 37-inch vertical jump, vertically. Hasn't played football since the 8th grade. There he goes. That's what we're talking about. But he can really catch well. There was teams that asked him if he'd be willing to play offensive tackle, and he told them he'd be willing to do their laundry if it would give him the opportunity to play football. Kid graduated college, got his master's degree in 5 years. He loves sports. He wants to continue to play.
He was a basketball player. That's the part you didn't say.
Yeah. Oh, and at his pro day, Brennan Daugherty, not a great quarterback, but he caught every single thing thrown to him. He went to Athletes in Action, which have, and Cardell Jones said that he is the most intriguing player that he's ever seen in his life. He said that he's never seen someone that big move that well. It's just a shot in the dark. Less than 2% of 7th-round picks ever make it in the NFL. And if you're going to take a chance, this is the type of guy you take a chance on. Let me repeat that one more time. 6'5", 297 pounds, and he ran a 4.8, 340. So that's the one guy I throw out there for the 7th round. He's a tight end / offensive tackle / we'll find something to do with him.
Yeah, FC, do you want to throw any other? We've got 2 picks here, so do you want to throw out a running back or receiver?
Here's the problem.
I've got a running back. I'll throw out if you don't have one.
Sure, go ahead.
I want to throw out Darius Jackson, running back from Eastern Michigan. Bigger guy, 6 foot, 220, MAC guy. His pro day, he was running in the low 4.4s, a 41-inch vertical, 11-foot broad jump, explosive, big guy that that falls this late, can take over that 3rd job, possibly move into the 2nd job as D'Angelo Williams moves on. So I'll throw that out for the first of the 2 picks. I think this is about the range he's going to go. Do you have any other running backs or receivers that you want to throw in?
I mean, I really liked. I actually thought that you would maybe think he was gone in the 6th round. That's why I didn't throw out Jackson. Wide receiver. I actually, you're going to laugh at this. I'm old school. I put pen to paper, so I'm now switching to my list. And it's a long list. You'd be so proud of my notebook. I actually did have one guy that interested me in the 7th round, not as much. Oh boy, this isn't going to be popular, and I can hear myself getting yelled at already. But I really like Cody Core. He played at Ole Miss. Great. But oh boy, does he have drop problems. He's Dwight Stone. But outside of catching the football, he's everything that you look for. But if you got the kid from Central Michigan that started in front of Thomas Rawls, who got drafted by, or was, I believe, a 7th-round pick or free agent for Seattle, yeah, I'm all about that. And I'll still bang the table a little bit for my super freak Fant out of Western Kentucky.
All right, well, B2B, throw me some names.
Well, I will, but let me give you a couple of offensive guys, if you don't mind,
Sure.
since we're on the subject, right? Because we've got 2 picks here. I got a guy for sure I want to bang the table with for one of them. But let's talk about this guy. We want to talk about slot receiver to replace what we've got going at slot right now, who can also give you not just return ability, but the best return ability probably in college football last year. He went to he went to school at Marshall and the MAC. His name is DeAndre Reeves. Let me tell you what, the only downside really with him is he's a slightly overage. He's 24. But other than that, he's a guy that they probably didn't use enough in the slot because he has, quickness and ability with it. He's got enough size to make it work. He's Marcus Wheaton sized. He had 4 touchdowns on returns last year and another handful as a slot receiver. I just figure he's a guy that if you're looking for someone to kind of be position flexible, the more you can do, the more chance to make the team as a 7th rounder. If you can play some snaps at slot receiver and also be a good enough returner to replace Antonio Brown on occasion, to me that's a worthwhile pick. Additionally, you mentioned Fant, who's definitely, there's a guy that I'm interested in as a sort of out of nowhere kind of dude. But I just don't know. We went through this whole podcast without mentioning Rico Gathers. Rico Gathers is the power forward from Baylor, who is a little bit bigger than Rod Gronkowski. Apparently runs in the 4.6 range, and from everything that he's shown so far in terms of his football ability, like Ant, soft hands, ability to he's obviously a fantastic athlete. I just feel like that guy's going to work out. He's going to have a pro day on the 24th, which is a couple days from now. But me personally, that's a guy that is completely worth a 7th round pick. There's no doubt in my mind if he doesn't go earlier. I can't see a big difference between what he did before his draft and what Jordan Cameron did before his draft. And yet Jordan Cameron went in the 3rd or 4th round. So that's a guy that I would definitely consider. All right, now getting on to the defensive side, the guy that I would really like to bang the table for, probably other than Carl Joseph, my favorite guy that I watched on tape before this draft, and that's Roy Robertson-Harris out of UTEP. He is an edge guy with some size. He's about 266. The thing about him that jumps out immediately on tape, he has not 1, not 2, but 3 YouTube highlights that made the rounds of him chasing down a running back, at the major college level, 50 or 60 yards downfield, chased a guy, and here's a play coming up on the highlights right now where I think this happens. He gets caught on the other side in the wash, comes around and chases a guy all the way down the field. To me, you got a 266-pound guy that can run like blazes, that gives 100% effort on every play, and is able to chase down running backs from behind. I don't know what's not to like from that standpoint as a player. And then on top of that, his pass rush skills are pretty good. He bends the edge. He does all the stuff you'd like him to do. He just wasn't asked to do that so much until only at times this year in passing situations. But he looks the part, and he had results. A lot of tackles for loss and so on and so forth. He is a player that I just love his attitude. He tested well. He ran a 7 flat 3 cone. He's got enough movement skills and enough size and enough desire, I think, to make it as a 7th round pick. And edge
and
to
the
me
Steelers connection.
Oh yeah, go ahead. Say it, Taylor. FC.
Sean Figler is his head coach, and he was former offensive line coach for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
There you go. And
all right,
I guess
guys, I think we've got enough information here. I'm going to go ahead and run these 2 7th round picks in.
Wait, one more guy. Even if
you got one more, okay, throw one more in.
Even if you're not going to pick him.
Not going to change my pick, but go ahead.
It's totally worth mentioning Freddie Frazier, who, if he isn't picked in this draft, ought to be one of your first phone calls as a free agent. He went to school at Bethany in West Virginia. Perch has some inside information there from what I heard. But I also did a little digging because the guy didn't have a ton of statistics, like the kind of results that you might think by watching him on tape and knowing what kind of athlete he is. But I know specifically what he was asked to do by his coaches, and that he sacrificed statistics to be a guy that purposely took on double teams in the interior and so on and so forth. But Freddie Frazier,
double teams of 220-pound offensive linemen is what he did.
Right. Okay. Well, all I'm saying is,
let's just be the level of competition
saying,
he played at was poor, and his stats were pretty mediocre. Yeah, he was the best player on the field, but he didn't dominate the way you'd want to see a guy dominate that level.
No. He's better than Howard Jones, and he's a better athlete. But whether or not he's anything more than a block of clay to be an undrafted free agent, I just wanted to mention his name because I think he's actually a pretty good-looking football player.
I've got two friends that coached in that conference, and I asked them about the kid, and they thought he was good for a Division III player, and that was about talking about him being drafted. They kind of chuckled. So
okay, that's
the only insight I have into it. But, all right, we're going to run off the picks here. The first pick in the 7th round, we're going to take Darius Jackson, the running back from Eastern Michigan that played out of Thomas Rawls.
Don't blame you.
Physically, just outstanding, good experience, guy who can definitely develop into the second back, I think, in time. And the last pick is going to go to B2B, Rico Gathers, the tight end. That will be our draft. So let's go run it down one more time. Carl Joseph, the strong safety from West Virginia. Javon Hargrave, the defensive tackle. Jihad Ward, the defensive end. Spencer Durango, the offensive lineman. That takes us to round 6. Kalen Reed, the cornerback. The 7th round, Darius Jackson, the running back. And the project tight end, Rico Gathers, rounds out your Steelers mock draft.
All right, so
what do you think, guys? How do we do?
Well,
I think we did pretty good.
Give it a grade. Yeah, I was just going to say, pretty good is a grade.
I would say I'll put it this way. If I looked at that, I would say B+ with the potential of being A+. It's all going to come down to if Joseph heals and he's as good as we think. I think we probably got the best safety the Steelers had in his own time. So
I mean, the only thing else
different than Troy Polamalu. He's a different player than Troy Polamalu. I was never the biggest Troy Polamalu fan. I think he's an elite safety, future Hall of Famer, but he's a different type of player. He's more like when Rod Woodson got moved to free safety. So I really like Jihad Ward. I liked a lot of the picks. The one thing I wish that we would have done is maybe address inside linebacker, but it's tough to do, and there's going to be plenty of undrafted free agents that I think that will be able to fill that role. Morrison from Florida being one. He's now thought of as an undrafted free agent. That'd be one of the first guys I call. But I thought we did a great job.
Yeah, I think that we went for the bodies. We went for the big size guys to help replenish the defensive line. We got the number one glaring need of strong safety. The one area people are going to put a finger in our eye about and bitch and complain is we really didn't get a top corner, but I don't think there was one available in round 1 or round 2 that really could have stepped in and started anyway. So we picked a depth guy, and you can always go after another a veteran free agent guy just for depth here in the off season to add an extra body. But that's probably the one area we didn't get well enough, but we did what we could.
I would say about the draft that I'm a little bit concerned about edge. Right now it feels like by looking at this draft that we're not going to get a whole lot of help at edge, and you're really counting on Jarvis Jones and James Harrison, the ancient James Harrison, to give you enough this year. And then also going into next year, you're either forced to extend Jarvis Jones and put your marbles in his cart, or draft somebody and depend on him next year to start. So that's the only thing. I mean, what do you think about that, Kevin Colbert?
I think Bud Dupree is going to make the leap from year 1 to year 2. I think Javon Hargrave is going to give him an interior pass presence that they hadn't had in the past. I think Tuitt and Hayward getting more time on the bench is going to increase their productivity when they are in the game because they won't be so winded. And I think a lot of the sacks last year came from scheme. It came from blitzes, and I think that hopefully with some improved coverage, you'll be able to get a little bit more time to buy the edge rusher sometimes. So there's more than one way to skin a cat. It doesn't always have to be that big edge rusher. Of course, we'd like to have it. There really wasn't one that was going to fall to us in round 1 or round 2 that I think that was a real difference maker anyway. So instead of reaching for one of those guys, I think we filled the strong safety spot that was the biggest need. We added 2 big bodies on the defensive line that's going to help. Again, if we can start creating a bit of a rotation in there to keep those guys fresh, all their productivity should go up. So I think we did improve the pass rush without addressing that defensive end position. But you're right, it's going to be a need for the next draft.
Copy that. Well, gentlemen, can't think of a better way to close it out than that lineup looks pretty good as a place to hang our hat for the draft. I'll put this in the draft contest. We'll see how we did when the time comes. Final words from you, Perch?
Oh boy, yeah. Just hey, man, let's finally address this defense, build it back up in this draft to the point where Ben, over the next 4 years, doesn't have to completely carry the load. That he's got a defense that supports the offense, and let's get some more of those sticky Lombardis before our main man number 7 hangs him up. So that's what this draft's all about. I think this is a key one. They've got to get the defense right if they're really going to be serious contenders for a title.
FC?
Martavius, quit smoking the dope. Let's go, Pens. And I will see all of you in the chat little chat room that we're going to set up. People, don't be fucking douchebags setting up fake names. Just use your regular name. Be an adult. Talk about the draft. It's going to take us like 10 minutes to set up this draft room. Don't have us waste our 10 minutes being a douchebag. Be an adult. Be a grown-up. And have fun with it. I mean, it's the spring, you know. Smile. Have fun. Don't be an asshole.
Yeah,
That's pretty much it.
Enjoy the weather. Well, guys, I just want to thank you for putting up with 2 hours of time out of your day, which I know can't be easy. Appreciate that a lot, as I think the listeners do too. And we appreciate the listeners and the viewers for the first time on YouTube. Those of you who don't know how this works, what will happen is, although it was live broadcast, there'll be an archive version. I'll probably go through and fix it up a little bit and make sure we get rid of the rough spots. But that'll be both the podcast, as normally, will be available with just audio form, and then we'll also have a version on YouTube with some highlights plugged in there, so it looks like we know what we're talking about. Anyway, gentlemen, thank you very much for an excellent podcast. On behalf of FC and SteelPerch and everyone at SteelFury, I'm Bradshaw Ben, a.k.a. Wil Masisak, saying, go get 'em, Steelers in the draft.
Yeah, there was.
SteelerFury. SteelerFury.com.